fancy dinner. I want to stay home and have sex. How do we do both of those things and in which order? I recommend the sex first. So
really?
Oh, definitely. Add an extra hour and a half in the beginning to like, connect and hang out and like have fun, and then go out, eat. And then if you feel like having sex again when you come home, then great. But at least like you've had that connection. And then there's not this like, I'm full, it's late, I'm tired. And now we have to,
I have to perform.
Now we have to perform for each other.
That's a great suggestion.
Cassie David has this essay that she wrote that I love that's called Too Full to Fuck. And it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense. And it's like the last thing I want to do after I've indulged in like a nice meal,
Right.
Or like
Yeah.
had a lot to
Yeah,
drink.
you're full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
that
sexy.
Fuck first, everybody.
Hi,
Hey.
I'm Julia,
And I'm Amanda.
and this is Much Needed Advice.
A podcast for people who want to know what to do.
We have Yehuda Duenyas on. He is an Emmy-winning experiential director and an intimacy coordinator.
I'm so happy to be here.
And this is very appropriate for this weekend because Valentine's Day is coming up. And we could probably all use a little bit of intimacy coordination with either ourselves or our significant others. We're all going to be looking for tips.
It's
Hot
such a
tips.
last minute holiday sometimes too,
Yeah.
right? It's
Is
like,
it?
What do I do? For
You think
some
that-
people it is. It's like, oh my God, what do I do?
Do you tend to plan ahead for it, or are you more spontaneous?
I've planned a little bit ahead, but Valentine's Day for me is kind of mellow. Like me and my partner have a thing that we like to do. Like we order food in and like we keep it really mellow. And like it's really about us connecting. And so we'll like set a lot of time aside and, come up with different things that we want to do
So it's less
to
about
each other.
the superficial, like, we have to go to the fanciest restaurant, or we have to spend money on each other, or
Some people are into that. I'm personally not, but that's a real kind of a preference and taste thing. And if you're into that, as long as I think you're communicating that with your partner and there's some consent built around it and you can all manage your expectations and not be like wildly disappointed if like every little moment isn't perfect, and be able to roll with the night and have fun together and connect. I think that that's really what it's about.
yeah, it's like as long as both people are on the same page as far as what they're expecting and what they like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that-
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's some great advice right out of the gate. Managing expectations. And what we talk about a lot on this podcast is not expecting people to read your mind.
Totally.
So if it's important to you to go out to dinner or have red roses or whatever those things, you have to make that known.
Then everyone gets to have what they want and everyone gets to do something for the other person. And it's not like you didn't read my mind and you suck and this is never going to work and now we're never going to get married and like I can never have your children. If that's, then not everyone's on that track, but I know that that's kind of the mentality of the holiday kind of like leads to that in a way, and like it's all wrapped up in that.
Yeah, it can devolve into those huge conversations.
Yeah.
It can make you think that the tiniest quote unquote mistakes can totally derail your relationship.
Yeah, totally. And those, if that does happen to you on Valentine's Day, you can pivot from that state of mind and say like, okay, well, this is an opportunity for us to communicate differently and better, instead of being like everything is doomed. Say, actually, I'm feeling a little disappointed because I wanted X, Y, and Z. And maybe I didn't communicate that to you, and I can't expect you to read my mind. I don't know. I think it's just all about good communication. And then also just validating your partner's feelings, because if your partner says that to you and you're like, I can definitely get into like shame spirals of like, I suck, I'm a bad partner, I didn't do it right, this person's going to bail, but if you can just listen and say, hey, I hear that you're disappointed, and like, let's figure out a way to get our needs met and validate each other's feelings. I feel like without getting defensive about it, I feel like that's, I don't know, can really just go a long way to fostering good connection.
Yeah.
Good
I think
sex.
when I feel most accomplished in my relationship is when we can solve problems in the moment. It doesn't have to take us sleeping on it. It doesn't have to take a few days of thinking about it. It's like We can communicate when one of us is unhappy, and then we fix it right then and there, and then we salvage the day or salvage the night.
Totally. That's an amazing superpower to be able to solve, to number one, to recognize what it is in the moment, and then to have like a coherent conversation about it and be able to solve it. You're a superhero for being able to do that. Not everyone can do that. Like, I know that I personally, like, if I get triggered or upset, it's going to take me a day to understand why I got upset. Like, I'm just going to be like wrapped up in a moment. And I'm not going to be feeling good. And then when I calm down and like my vigilance system is like relaxed, then I'll be able to the next day be like, oh, okay, this is why I feel like I wasn't seen or heard in this moment. And then I can communicate to my partner and say, hey, in this particular moment when this happened, I felt this way. And then we can have a conversation about it. But being able to do that in the moment, I think, is like the holy grail. And like being able to resolve that stuff in the moment and say how you feel, that's incredible.
I think it's when I'm able to keep the success of the night top of mind. Like, that is the goal. The goal is to have a great night. Then all the other stuff, like my defensiveness or annoyance or whatever, if my partner's bringing something up, all that's kind of secondary to like, okay, but how do we get back to a successful night? Whatever it takes to get back there in the next hour.
Also on Valentine's Day, let's say you're going out to a fancy restaurant and like you want everything to be perfect. Like, nothing is ever totally perfect as much as you want the evening to be completely perfect. It, you know, it could be a long wait or your reservation got messed up. Like, if you look at it as all part of the adventure and like the fun part is just being together and like, oh my God, the weirdest thing happened to us on Valentine's Day. We got to the fancy restaurant and our reservation was messed up, or we sat next to the loud couple, or the music was too loud, or whatever. Then it all just becomes part of like the fun adventure, as opposed to like the night is ruined because this thing didn't go like absolutely perfectly or as it needed to be planned. And then it's like, you know, you're kind of like collaborators and conspirators together in this adventure, as opposed to like, you know, the world is against you. And this means like, it has a lot of significance in meaning. It means our relationship is doomed or something like that.
Right.
Because like not everything went like absolutely according to plan.
Right.
It's hard to remember.
We're the ones who control what everything means. Like, humans are little meaning makers where there's usually not meaning in most things. So you have the power to create meaning and to decide what everything means.
Totally.
Or that it means nothing. For me, well, we have a saying called "This is supposed to be fun." Yes. And I feel that way about things like this podcast and things like my relationship. A relationship is not a requirement for survival. It's supposed to be for fun. You know, you're supposed to enjoy it. That's the whole point. And it might be a coping mechanism too, but I always kind of default to humor when everything is going wrong. Like, if you can laugh in the darkest moments, then you can get through anything, right? Do you have like a mantra or anything you tell yourself in like really difficult moments where really easily the whole night could go badly that helps you reset your mind?
I think my mantra in general for lots of different stressful situations, which I'm kind of in often just in the industries that I work in, it's very stressful, but like relationships can also be stressful, is like validating my own feelings to myself is a really big deal for me. If someone is upset or a situation is going bad, like I'm the one who will take the blame for myself. I'll be like, this is my fault. I didn't show up in these 10 ways. I think a lot of us have much harsher voices in our heads than everyone kind of realizes or that people like to admit. Mm-hmm. And so if I can, number one, not try and like shove that voice into like a dark room and lock it up, but like say, okay, harsh voice, what do you have to say? It's like, well, this fucking sucks and blah, 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 and this is all your fault and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, I hear that. And that could be partially true, but it's also not the whole story. And then I feel like I'm resourced to then show up for other people because of that.
That makes me think of this affirmation, which is very simple, but this feels hard because it is hard.
Totally.
And it's just affirming that things are hard and that's why they feel hard. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're a failure. If you're in a really stressful situation, I'm stressed because this is stressful.
Yeah.
And that's kind of affirming that little voice. And then it can kind of go, okay, I'm heard.
And also not getting into that comparing thing. Well, why should I be stressed? People have it so much worse. There's people I think when you start getting into that, like people have it worse Olympics, like you're starting to really invalidate your own feelings.
There may be things that happen in our past or experiences that we have that have made connection hard for us. And I think we all have it to some degree, but we could invalidate our past experiences by being like, well, I haven't had it that hard in life. Like that shouldn't have made life that difficult for me. Like other people had way worse experiences. They've gone through abuse or they've gone through, whatever. Connection should be easy for me. But that's totally invalidating the fact that it's hard for everybody sometimes.
Definitely. When you're talking about intimacy and connection, a lot of it is the ability for yourself to become vulnerable and open to another person. And that's probably the scariest thing that there is, which can also be like the superpower of intimacy. Because when you can do that with somebody, it's the most powerful thing ever. And that's when you start getting into like the really kind of deep, intimacy and sex or whatever it is that you're into. We talk about sex and stuff, but some people are into sex. They're into different type of connection, and that's fine too. But I think that as humans, we just want to connect.
As an intimacy coordinator, what do you see are some of the biggest barriers to fostering good intimacy? Like what are people struggling with when they're not doing it well?
I'll back up and tell you what an intimacy coordinator is. I work in film and television and also theater, and I come in and help coordinate the intimate scenes. And so that has to do with nudity and simulated sex. There is a very big sort of administrative side to that. There's legal documents and writers and, people have to agree, and we try and get very detailed about what people are going to agree to do so that there's not any surprises on the day. And then there's actually the performance aspect of it, and also just your personal boundaries. Like you might have had something in your life where you don't want to be touched on your neck, and a scene partner might not know that, and they might like put their hands around your neck or like go in and like start making out with your neck or sucking, whatever it is, like sucking on your, who knows. An actor being able to communicate their boundaries to us, and then us being able to sort of manage those boundaries, just makes the situation feel safe when you're getting into performing these intimate scenes, which is really, it's delicate, and it's also a pretty vulnerable place to be as a performer. And there's a lot of people in the room too. This is film and television, so it's not, it's not adult films, it's not pornography. And so we have to fake everything. And there's ways that we fake those things. There's barriers that we use. There's masking, camera angles, all the power and tools of cinema that we have to make something feel real. And one of the things that I like to think about in intimate scenes is that you don't have to see everything, but you definitely have to feel it. As an audience member, you have to feel what's happening. And sometimes that means not seeing anything. Like that could be much more powerful of like this suggestion. So there's a million ways to tell a story, but I think, having people being able to communicate with each other, 2 actors or 3 actors or 4 actors, however many people are in the scene, being able to understand what that other person's boundaries are and what's going to make them feel safe, allows them then to forget the technical stuff and really, sink deeply into their role. And so then they can just like completely be there and know that like they're going to be safe in the scene, they're going to be taken care of. And they're going to be seen and heard if there's an issue.
I have a question. This is like the biggest thing on my mind, I think. How do you make a scene sexy? Like, let's say it's supposed to be a sexy scene. What makes it, how do you make it sexy? And like, have you ever been in a situation where it's just not working? It's not showing up as sexy at all, and you had to like fix it somehow. How did you do it?
Yes, definitely. And out of no fault of anyone's, but yes, sometimes it's like there's something a little bit off with the chemistry. Sometimes it's about like actually being able to see, even if it's like a character exercise, like you ask one person to imagine the other person putting their socks on in the morning, like something really mundane like that, because that like really humanizes them and allows you to like look at them in this way that's like kind of takes it out of the performance of I need to perform sexy in this moment, and like actually has you see them. And then there's like, it depends on the scene, but let's say it's like hot, loving, consensual scene. Partners who haven't seen each other in 6 months are like now back together. Person arrives at the apartment and they jump each other because it's been so long. And it's like, okay, how do you make that sexy? Like there's a lot of things in that. And so it's like pacing, like, are they ripping each other's clothes off? Are they just like savoring each other in like the most delicious kiss? A lot of times too, like you can show something more intense up front and then audience wise, you'll imagine more later. And so if you show like a close up of a kiss and you show like sucking on a tongue or like something that's a little bit unusual, but that's like really visceral in a way and has that like real sense of connection. Like I like to incorporate a lot of different like senses, like smell, I think is important. Like somebody smelling someone's neck or someone's armpit or like, something like that that's slightly unusual. It's like, whoa. That can really create a sense of like having something feel hot. I've had times too when actors just didn't feel connected to each other. And it's a little bit tricky, actually. There's not one way through that, but it's a very particular to what's happening. In one instance, I realized that I kind of like wasn't on the ball, and I realized that one actor had smoked a cigarette during their break.
Oh no.
And I forgot to check in about mints before this kiss. And I was like, what is going on in camera? This is like not connecting. And it was a type of set where it was in a car. And like, there was like flags and cameras, like I couldn't poke my head into the car and be like, what's up? And everyone is mic'd. Like I couldn't poke my head and be like, what's going on? But I was like, what is going on? Anyway, when they took a break, I was like, is everything okay? And a lot of this stuff is questions. How are you feeling? Is everything okay? Is there anything that can make, like help foster this connection? And it was like this, person smoked a cigarette. And it was disgusting to me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like and of course I blame myself. I'm like, I'm such an idiot. I forgot to like hand out mints. But, on a long day on set, like, nothing goes perfectly smoothly. And that's just something to learn from, something that had happened. So,
or like if someone eats like salmon at craft services.
So there's this story about Hitch, the movie Hitch with Will Smith and Eva Mendes, where like I guess the day that they were supposed to shoot their makeout scene or whatever it was, at lunch she was eating a tuna sandwich with onions in it and Doritos like crushed in it.
Oh
and
my God.
Will walked by and was like, really?
That's funny.
She just like did not care.
She forgot.
She had the confidence that she was hot enough.
On set, it's something that I like really, I'm like, if you're doing a sex scene, you could please come showered, bring a toothbrush, or like we have those little disposable toothbrushes, here's some gum beforehand, here's a mint.
I think that's where I would be most grateful to you as an actor, that I don't have to tell the other person those things and I can just know that it's going to be taken care of. I feel like sometimes we can have this belief that spontaneity in and of itself is sexy. And I don't think that's true. Like it's exciting, but if you're prepared, even in your personal life, for what your boundaries are and what the other person likes, then you can have a sexier experience and be more present. I
totally agree with that. And I think that there's a difference between spontaneity, preparedness, and surprise. Like let's take Valentine's Day. It's like, well, I don't want to plan this and I don't want to tell you every little thing that I want to have happen. I just want it to happen and I want to feel magical. It's like, well, it's not going to necessarily feel magical, and a little bit of planning and communicating with your partner about what it is that you want can then allow you to be surprised. And like, I'm really big into like planning sex, especially like like I have kids, I have a daughter and I have a stepdaughter. And like when you're live, and I work on set sometimes 12 hours a day, like when your life is that way and you start to kind of like it's not like, oh, we just had a beautiful drive on the beach and we smoked a joint and now we're at like Malibu seafood and like, let's go fuck. It's spontaneous. Like there's room for that too. But when you're in the grind of life, it's like, let's just know that Wednesday from 6 to 9 is our date night. And like, and now that's not spontaneous anymore, but I can now fantasize about okay, I want this, I want that, I want that. What do you want? And now you can start to like,
There's anticipation.
yeah, you can start to build anticipation. You can start feeling like, okay, I'm super excited for this. And I think that there's different phases to a relationship too. When you first get together, the first couple of years, it's just like spontaneous sex in the kitchen and on the living room floor, just like wherever all the time. And then, if you continue and get into a more long-term relationship, those things just change. So this little tangent was about the spontaneity on set. I feel like a lot of planning can lead to like a good sense of more freedom. Spontaneity is amazing, but it's not the only ingredient that can lead to like a spark.
This is like so big in my relationship, being in a long distance relationship. And something I had to learn is that we couldn't rely on the mood to strike in order for us to make sure that we're having enough sex for us both to be happy in the relationship, right? Because we could be visiting each other on a week where I'm just having a terrible week and I'm super stressed and I don't want to have sex. We have to plan. And that helps me because actually being prepared and getting my mind in check helps me make sure that I've set my days up as well as I can so that I can actually end work at a reasonable hour, have some time to decompress, connect. You have to create that mood. You can't wait for it to come to you.
It's also nice because you can prepare yourself. I mean, I know women.
There's a lot that goes into this.
There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that you might feel better if you're waxed or got a pedicure or, have your favorite lingerie on standby.
Yes.
If you can feel really good and really sexy because you have time to prepare, then I think that just adds to it.
And then there's other ways you were talking about the spark and the intimacy. Like I use this framework called the Erotic Blueprints,
Yeah.
which you can see it's actually on Netflix right now. There's the Sex, Love and Goop, the Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah.
And Jaya, who teaches the blueprints and who created this framework, is actually on there doing like sexological body work with this couple. It's beautiful. It's an incredible episode. That can help you sort of get a sense of what the blueprints are. And I studied with her for a few years and, in that kind of,
wow,
in that school for a few years, some years ago.
Can you explain what the blueprint is? It's a quiz you can take, right?
There's a quiz online that you can take, but it's really like it's a typing for your erotic self, and kind of like the love languages, like your body and your eroticism speaks a certain language. And when you know your language and when you know your partner's language, you can start to learn to build a bridge in your communication. And so, and I can do an hour talk about this, so I'll just do it really quickly.
We'll have to have you back.
I'd love to do it. There's 5 blueprints. There's energetic, sensual, sexual, kinky, and shapeshifter.
I have taken this quiz.
What were you? Do you remember?
Oh my God. I think I was sensual.
Mm-hmm.
What was the first one you said?
Energetic.
I think it was energetic and sensual. Maybe one more than the other. I don't remember which.
Those are mine. I'm energetic first and sensual second.
And I might be sensual first. I feel like I remember we may have talked
What's
about
yours,
this.
Yehuda, if you don't mind sharing?
I'm a shapeshifter, but my entry point is energetic. And so after that, I feel like I'm pretty kind of evenly spread out between sensual, sexual, kinky, and can sort of, go in and out of all of those different blueprints.
So if you're listening and you are wanting to maybe have this kind of a conversation with your partner, but not sure how to bring it up or nervous about it, this is like a really good on-ramp. If you say, hey, let's take this quiz together, it'll be really fun, because then you get so many insights about your partner and about yourself, what you like, what they like, how you can set the mood better for them, or things you might not have thought about that really help you get in the mood. I think it's like a great tool. We'll find a link for it for you guys to open up those conversations. Totally.
It's really powerful. And just to give a quick example, an energetic is turned on by space and distance. And that doesn't mean being distant or avoidant, but it means that like the difference between sitting 5 feet apart on a couch and 3 feet apart on a couch is like really significant. Mm-hmm. And so they're turned on by space. They can feel your energy. They can feel the way that you're looking at them. a sexual is turned on by genitals, orgasm, sex, if there wasn't an orgasm and genitals weren't touched, like, is that even sex? Like, to a sexual blueprint. An energetic can, like, you can, hover your hands over an energetic and they could have like energetic orgasms without even being touched. And so when a sexual, let's say a sexual and an energetic are on a first date and it's like time to say goodbye, and like one person's walking the other person to the car and it's kind of like, all right, what's going to happen? And the sexual is just like moves in quickly for a kiss, and the energetic is like, whoa, 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 that's like way too fast. Like, that is a kind of a interesting example of like the bumping up of two blueprints together, where the energetic is going to feel like that was you came into my space way too fast. I really want more of a build up, more of a tease. I want to feel you. I want to give you the space and permission to then come into my space. And a sexual is just like, what's the big deal? It's just a kiss. It's just a genital. It's just, let's get it on. We don't,
What's a genital here and there?
Hashtag just a genital.
What's a genital between friends?
We don't even need foreplay. We can just like jump into it. And that's perfectly valid too. It's just a language that you speak. And when you start to learn what and there's a really sort of complicated shadow aspects and light aspect. There's a lot of nuance to all of this as well. And there's also kind of a stack. It's like I'm energetic first, but then my stack is like I'm a shapeshifter after that. But like I need to have I want to feel a connection with somebody. Like I've never had a one night stand, for example. Like it's just me. And so like a couple coming together, like to bring up this hotness thing, it's like a couple coming together that haven't seen each other in 6 months. Maybe like the door flies open and they look at each other and there's just this like really intense moment where they're not touching yet. They're just like seeing each other and building up the anticipation. And then the rhythm is like, bam, and then they attack each other. Like there's a lot of different ways to kind of build up that sense of like eroticism, tension, feeling, chemistry that we were talking about earlier, if we're feeling like it's not there. And so there's a lot of different techniques that I might use to like help foster that.
What I love about this is that it can help bring to light if something isn't working in your relationship with your partner, right? If something feels a little off, it can be easy to like feel shame or to feel like maybe that person isn't right for you. But when you take a quiz like this and you better understand your needs and their needs, then it's like, no, it's not about either of you. It's not that the relationship can't work. It's like you're very valid in your wants and desires, and so are they. And there's a way to find a compromise.
Totally. Or to build a bridge.
I just wonder, how could an energetic communicate with a sexual, like you talked about in your example, in a way that they'll also find fulfilling and not just like, my partner likes when I build anticipation, so I have to make sure I have enough so it doesn't feel like a chore, or like they have to change what they like. What's the common ground?
Anyone who is like remotely introspective and interested in their partner in some way, you can expand into other blueprints and start to learn what that is. And it's like feeling something that you just didn't know existed to feel. The sexual, there's a lot of just needing to know that this is going to happen. I'm going to get off tonight. Like it's very important to a sexual. Perfectly valid too. It's like, that's what you need to feel seen and turned on and know that it's coming. And then you can have a really fun time with like how long it takes to like tease this person into like, and like if you can create this dynamic where you are calming down the vigilance center of the sexual, you can start to actually build this like tease and anticipation with that blueprint. And then they're going to start to feel your energetic vibes because they know that they're going to be able to have the gratification that they need. I know there's so much play. It's like if you can get to a place where you can look at this as play between you and playfulness. And sometimes you don't have time. So set a timer for 15 minutes.
Timer cube.
Timers are amazing, actually. It's like, okay, what do you want? It's like, it's midnight. We have to wake up in the morning to get the kids to school. Like this happens to me all the time. It's like, but like,
or
okay.
I have a flight in 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah. You have to leave for a flight in 30 minutes. It's like, let's set a timer. What do you want for 5 minutes? What do I want for 5 minutes? You know, and like you can really play with timers and like what you want. It's really hot. It's fun and hot. I think you have to like expand your definition. Everyone needs to expand their definition of what sex is. Sex is not just like penetrative intercourse. You know, oral sex is sex. For an energetic, cuddling could be sexual. And we use the word compromise a lot. Compromise feels kind of like a dirty word. It's like not dirty in a good way. It feels like I'm not going to get something that I want. I like to think of it more as like building a bridge between these two sides.
Yeah,
it's like we're going to
better.
meet in the middle of this bridge, and this bridge is going to be awesome. And now we can walk on this bridge over to my side, and now we can walk on this bridge over to your side, but we're building this cool, sturdy, like communication bridge between us where, you know, sometimes you're not in the mood, but your partner is. And like, you know, in a long-term relationship, you know, you gotta show up for your partner. And can be really fun. Like your partner's pleasure is fun.
How would you build a bridge between someone who's like the kinky type and then someone who's the sensual type?
Asking for a friend?
Well, so this is something that I've kind of been thinking about lately because I feel like I've tried a lot of, I don't know if we'll keep this in, but I've tried a lot of kinky shit, but now I'm like in my 30s and I'm like, I've kind of done it and it's not my type and like been there, done that and whatever. But my boyfriend really is in an exploratory phase and he really wants to try a bunch of shit. And for me, I'm like, well, then that's not sex to me. Like that's not sexy to me at this point in my life. It's kind of like I'm putting on a play. I'm not like really feeling it in the moment, but I want to make him happy. So,
okay. Amazing question. So number one, I think the kinky blueprint, there is like a whole like universe unto itself. It's very creative. And the positive aspects of the kinky are super, and there's two different types of kinky too. There's physical and there's psychological. Physical is like impact play, bondage, spanking, whipping, slapping, you know, there's, I can't even list everything. There's so much under this. And also what kink means is just something that is taboo for you. Something that's outside of your comfort zone. That is kinky to you. And it's going to be different for everyone because somebody who is a dom or into like, you know, bondage, S&M, whatever lifestyle that they live, like what's kinky to them is going to be something that's way outside of their own comfort zone and taboo. Kinky for, you know, somebody might be having a threesome, or it might even be doing it in a position that you know, like having sex in a position that you don't normally have. And that could be considered kinky to someone. So it's really just what's outside of your own kind of pattern or your own comfort zone. So we talked about physical, and then there's a psychological aspect. There's role play, like, and that can go into so many different things. Like, you know, it could be about degradation. It could be about, you know, playing different roles. So I think sort of the first thing would be to understand that, you know, if it turns you on to give your partner pleasure, like that can be that's a turn. For me, that's a turn on. Like if my partner's into something that I'm not into, well, that's kind of interesting. I'm like, oh, wow, what's going to turn you on? What's exciting? Like, let's play in that way. It doesn't mean that's the only way that we have to play. But, you know, let's say it's date night and 6 to 9 p.m., like we said, like this is sex time. We have 3 hours. It's like, let's dedicate an hour of this time to what you want. And like, let's make a list, accoutrements, gear, all of that stuff. If he wants to be doing this stuff to you, then that's, you know, like that's a negotiation to have. I think this is just like an actual nuts and bolts conversation.
Literally nuts and bolts.
That can like lead to actual play and actual connection and fun. In the kink community in general, like talking, so much is about negotiating a scene or negotiating what is going to happen. What are my boundaries? What is my safe word? And then you set the room up. And then you're like, okay, you go into the living room, you sit down on the couch, I'm putting a blindfold on you, and you're just going to sit there. And then you go and like you putter around and you like the candles, or you like get the room ready and you're like, are you still
Play
sitting?
Sudoku.
Are you still sitting there? Yeah, you place it. This is how adults play. This is the way that we can let go, get lost in another person, feel dirty, feel loved, feel like all of these things that we want to, experience and feel in a safe container and safe context.
Yeah. So I think number one, think about how your partner's pleasure turns you on. Number two, know that you can both get both of your needs met. One person doesn't have to take the L on this one. It can be a win-win. And number three, it's a negotiation. You don't have to give the person everything that they're asking for. They don't have to give you everything that you're asking for that one time. And then number four, know that you're going to have many opportunities.
Totally.
You don't just have one chance.
Yeah.
And you can add in, like, for a sensual, the environment is really important, right? So maybe like playing with a new toy or a blindfold or whatever your partner wants to do would be more sexy to you if the lights were off and candles were lit, or, there's a way that you can make it sexy for you where if like the lights are on super bright, or if you feel like the house is messy. That's the thing about sensuals, is like you can't relax if you feel like
Totally me.
you're looking at your pile of clothes on the chair in the corner. So if you can set the scene with your needs in mind as well, then you kind of are both creating an environment that is sexy for you both.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah.
One of the coolest parts about relationships is what you discover about yourself and the new experiences that they lead you to have in life, and they make you a more well-rounded person.
Just educating yourself and knowing what else is possible, I think, is just a really huge gift that you can give to your partner. A lot of us crave variety and, novelty too. And so being able to find new, fun, exciting things between you is just like, what a gift.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
I think we did it.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So that's what we think you should do. What do you think? Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you need advice? DM us on Instagram at much.needed.advice or email us at muchneededadvicepod@gmail.com.
Bye.
How do we become one voice?